Let's begin with a prayer. Father, we thank you for this day that you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it and see you in all things. In Christ's name, amen. I want to begin a series with you on Conformed to His Image. I remember I was with my agent many years ago, and he said, what one concept, one book would define you personally? And this is what really emerged from that. I had been writing reflections, teaching letters for years, and I combined a lot of the material I had been writing into this book called Conformed to His Image. And I want to give you kind of an overview of why I wrote it, and in doing so over the next several weeks, give you a picture of what I regard to be the essence of the spiritual life, looking at it from multiple facets. So today I'm just going to give you a bit of a visual. It's all going to be visual materials that we've created some years ago for your visual enhancement of the content. And immediately we're struck by a variety of approaches that I have been encountering and had been encountering for years. It's clear that the body of Christ is extremely diverse. It's interesting that my Sunday morning class I teach in an Anglican church. My Wednesday morning men's study is at a Presbyterian church, and my Friday morning men's study is at a Baptist church. It's kind of interesting. And even there are different approaches in people, and I've been involved in all kinds of settings. But I always love the unity and also the diversity of the body of Christ. It's one of the things we are appealed to, and that's why we have certain aspects. Some of us will be drawn, and the Lord knows that. Even in the heavenly realms, there's going to be different aspects and different experiences that we're going to enjoy because there's no one best thing. Each approach, however, sometimes when I was reading some of the literature on spiritual formation, I'd read about the disciplines, and suddenly that's the be-all and it's the end-all. Or another approach was called exchange life. And they didn't really think of the disciplines in the same way that the people did, because they thought of that as legalism or imposed, which isn't the case. But they are not hearing each other. And there was a kind of a difference there, and I was exposed to that. And each one more or less claimed that that's it. This is the one for you. And that's a danger to do it, because in my own experience, and God has graciously enabled me to be connected with and have associations with a lot of different groups over the years. And I realized there is no one quick fix or one size fits all, because there is a unity in that diversity of the body of Christ. But no matter what journey you take, the pursuit of God is the greatest adventure of all, and they begin to see. So I'm trying to help them understand. I want you to appreciate the landscape because it's a gem with many facets. And all of you have heard the story about the blind men and the elephant, have you not? And the idea of 6 blind men were living in a village, and the villagers told them, hey, there's an elephant in the village today, and they'd never, quote, seen one, but at least they could go and feel the thing. And so, as you know in the story, they decided, even though we can't do it. So the first one said, when he came to it, the one who touched his leg said, hey, this elephant's a pillar, which makes complete sense. Oh, no, it's like a rope. There's like the guy who touched the tail, you see. It's no, it's like a thick branch of a tree, and that's the one who touched the trunk of the elephant. No, it's like a big hand fan, and he's the one who touched the ear of the elephant. It's a huge wall, said a 5th one who touched the belly. No, it's a solid pipe, said the 6th one who touched the tusk of the elephant. And of course, you know how the story goes, that they began to argue about it, and everyone insisted that he was right. And it looked like they were going to get agitated, and a wise man came and said, you have to understand this, that actually, you're all right. Each one of you is touching a different part of the same creature, and you're all actually right, but the total is greater than the sum of the parts is really what this parable reveals, isn't it? So it's all, and it's a diversity, and each of us will stress, but if you're not careful, you're going to reduce this elephant to a tusk or to a tail, and that would be an inadequate approach. Instead, you realize that diversity is needful for us to have an understanding. So I have certain goals. It's synthetic, which means I like to put all the pieces together. So I don't know why I'm wired this way, but I am. I'm a synthesizer. and I am a generalist, and I like to synthesize and put pieces together and make them fit together, but in a both-anded approach. So that's why I believe that there are many facets, because you have to appreciate your uniqueness in Christ, and some of us will be drawn more to some than to others, and that's okay, but it's good for you to be aware of all the approaches that are taken, and that's what I sought to do, and to put them all together in that one volume. Look at the options that you have for your spiritual journey and get out of a rut, because sometimes people do. Some people bore themselves in their prayers, don't they? Because they get into the same old, and you need to mix it up and so forth, and sometimes try a different thing so that you're not going to be in a rut, or experiment with other facets as well, and try some other things that you haven't ordinarily been drawn to, so that you expand your horizons and become more comfortable in other things, even though you may not be intuitively drawn. As an introvert wouldn't be drawn to corporate spirituality as much as an extrovert would be. Still, there's something to be said in each one of these ways. And then you, for each of these things, will have, as you use them together, a greater passion, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is it not? Again, may I know you more clearly, love you more dearly, follow you more nearly. It keeps coming back down to that. And so to appreciate also the unity and the diversity of the body of Christ. And so that's really part of what I have in mind. For whom he foreknew, the scripture tells us, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son. And that is the basis upon which I named the book. That God's intention is ultimate intention for you and me is that we be fully conformed to Jesus Christ. How will that be? Right now, in our deepest self, as we'll see, especially emphasized by Exchange Life teaching, in our deepest self, we already are seated with him in the heavenly places, are we not? That's where you are. Whether you feel like it or not, you choose to believe that what the scriptures teach you is true about yourself. So you are seated with him in the heavenly places. But you're not fully conformed to him yet in your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions, your desires, your aspirations, your intentions. Those aren't purified, but they are being purified. So as I say, we're living in a soul-forming world. And in this soul-forming world, our task in this brief journey is to become more in our practice who we already are in our position, so that you are a new being, but you're also a becomer. And it's a both and. But then there's a third aspect in which you're going to become perfectly conformed, because that perfection will be completed when we stand before Jesus, and then he burns away that which is that was wood, hay, and stubble. And then that which was done in the Spirit will remain. So then we'll be actually in our soul as perfect as we are already in our spirit. And what's the third part of you? Your body also will be conformed to the image of his Son. And now I use the metaphor that our physical body is to our resurrected body as a caterpillar is to the butterfly. And that helps me a great deal. It's the same, but it's pretty different. It's really hard to imagine. So to give you an overview, then, what we're going to be looking at initially is there's a current hunger for spirituality. Now, I wrote this book, it's many years ago. It came out in 2001 initially. Now there's a revised version. It came out in 2020. But there's still this hunger for spirituality, but there are people going to the wrong places to get their needs met. And then there are going to be just a journey and a pilgrimage, say a word about that. And then what are the basic facets? And then the need for a unity and a diversity. So just to give you a feel for that, there is indeed a hunger for spirituality. Here's an Elvis cult here. This is kind of crazy stuff. But right now, as we might say, put it, religion is out rather. Religion is out. And what's in? Spirituality, and you see that word spirituality can mean any number of things, as you well know. You can fill in the blanks, but that's really the reality. And there have been changes in our worldview that have illustrated this, because there was a Judeo-Christian consensus that occurred in Europe from about the 6th century A.D. to about the 16th or 17th century, and it began to erode. And that led to scientific progress. In fact, it was in that theistic vision, and only there, that empirically based science could be developed. There are reasons why that's the case. And there was a humanism in the proper sense, but then it began to get disconnected from God. And so the humanism there became more of a naturalism. And you moved from there into even more of a radical shift into what's called postmodernity. And so in the 20th century, we now find ourselves living where the absolute consensus of people is more towards skepticism, relativism, and multiculturalism. That will be the default. In the past, it used to be that there was a God, that there was a being, that was an eternal being. It was a theistic consensus, no longer. Now, it's the consensus, the popular consensus is a skepticism that moves away. So there was initially an appeal to transcendent solutions, and there was a satisfying vision because it was based not only on the beauty of God's world, but also the beauty of God, the truth of God's word. But then human reason came along. But you see, the problem is you can't live that way. You can't live in total skepticism, and it's corroded by the acids of its own assumptions. And so the fact is that we're actually going back to the quest for a transcendent solution, because the bankruptcy of humanism is evident. So, but here's the thing that they want. They want the warm fuzzies of transcendence, but they do not want it to be personal. Because if it's personal, they're accountable. So they want them to some impersonal force, some cosmic power, some whatever it might be, as long as it's not personal. So this way, you knock on the door and there's nobody home. But you have the feeling that there's something more than that, and that's where we've gone in our time. So spirituality could be defined now as Native. You could be Native American spirituality. It could be Eastern mysticism. It could be Western European paganism. It could be some form of Hinduistic meditation, some cosmic consciousness, yoga in various forms, and so forth. But none of these things really constitute what I mean. So why, as Martin Luther said, should the devil have all the best tunes? So let me use that, but pour it with the wine of revelation and use the term. Let me define my terms, because I'm not going to just not use spirituality because it's such a powerful and compelling approach. So I define spirituality in this way as authentic, biblically orthodox approaches to the spiritual life. That's how I define it. So given that, we're good. You see, now you know where I'm coming from. And so that's where it helps me to realize that biblical spirituality then gives me a vision that's solid. It's rooted and grounded in truth because His Word is truth. Remember how I like to put it now, that God's beautiful world, though fallen, the beauty of God's world points to the truth of God's Word. It's the back door to the Bible. And so they're both derivative from the mind and of the Maker. And why Christians had been more hungering, starting in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, there was more of a growth in this area because it was an ambient cultural interest, as I just told you, in spirituality, but also there was a dissatisfaction with the Christian subculture. A quest for meaning and purpose and significance has been developed, and in the church as well, people need to have that relevance and find it a way, but to connect it with Scripture, not something extra biblical. But there's also been, in our time, a greater exposure to the classics of spirituality. I remember Richard Foster's Celebration of Discipline came out, around 1980, I'm going to guess, something maybe in the 70s it was. But it opened up for many people some things that others hadn't been exposed to, certain earlier writers and so forth. A.W. Tozer, though, was prescient in that because in his knowledge of the holy and the pursuit of God, he constantly quoted from earlier sources, and so he was a unique person. But there's a return to the classics, and that's a good thing for us to hear. A movement toward accountability and discipleship is in our time as well, and I think it's a growing awareness of that. More ministries, for example, marketplace ministries, discipleship ministries than have been emphasized before. But it is both a journey and a pilgrimage. It's a journey that, of course, begins. The journey begins when you are reconciled with the one who made you. So the forgiveness is based upon not our achievements, as we know, but upon his grace that he pursues us, woos us, purchases us, provides for us, and prepares and protects us. And so this progresses through faith and obedience. So the journey begins when we are adopted into his family. As J.I. Packer put it, the traitor is forgiven. He's brought into supper and given the family name. That's pretty big stuff. That's you. You've been given the family name. You're adopted into the family of God. So that's when the journey really begins. It doesn't end with your conversion. That's what the starting point is. And instead of various testimonies, I remember hearing when people would talk, they've been believers for 30 or 40 years at this church I used to go out to as a kid, and when they had testimonies, sometimes they would talk about their conversion, and then they would sit down. Make me wonder, well, what's happened the last 30 years since then? You see, it's like it stopped. I got there, I'm saved, and now I'm done. I have my fire and life insurance. No, that's where the journey begins, and it progresses. And so it's not a journey to Christ. What I love about it, it's a journey with him. You're not trying to find him. He's found you. And so he's in your innermost life, in your inner being, is he not? So you come to see him and become like him. And of course, as you well know, you're pilgrims. What are the metaphors that are used? A pilgrim, a sojourner, a wayfarer, an exile, a wanderer, a tenant. You see, all these are metaphors of brevity. You're not home. You're in a soul-forming world, but you never arrive because you're on a journey that's going to lead to its consummation in the Father's house. And so, in this spiritual pilgrimage, then, as we said, using the metaphor in Hebrews 11 of sojourners and aliens, that we do well to number our days that we can present to God a heart of wisdom, don't we? Remember the brevity of your life. Memento mori are powerful things to use, and it's valuable. Next time I do a sermon here, I have to remember this because I'm going to do a thing maybe on Psalm 90 if Alfred wants me to do. And I'm going to wouldn't it be funny if I did this, if I put a little candle right here. Well, there's a candle, I'll put a little, maybe, and an hourglass over there. Because there's a church in Connecticut that had them on there, and it was an 18th century church. They used to put those up there. The people didn't know why they were there, just thought it was decorations. And I remember after I preached there once, I said, I'm going to try this out. So I did there. And so I tested out and made sure the candle really was a real candle, and I brought my matches. I had them prepared. And I checked, make sure the hourglass really does turn over and all that. So I had my visuals prepared. And then what I did is I started off, and I went to the pulpit, and you have to climb up to the pulpit. It's one of these old things. It's about 20 feet off the ground. So you're looking down on people, and you're under a sacred canopy, which if this cord we're holding it were to break, you'd be snuffed out for sure. But the fact is, it was a fabulous, because I'm on eye level with the people in the balcony. It's very interesting stuff. But then what I did is, before saying a word, I didn't say a word. I went up to, and I took a match. I lit the candle. That's never been done before. These are just objects to be seen, symbolic of something. Then I went over and reached out in the hourglass, and I turned it upside down, and I didn't tell them why. So there was some tittering and so forth and all that. But later, when I teach us to number our days that we may present to you a heart of wisdom, I explained why I did that. And so when it was over, I did this thing about the anticipation of heaven. I did a musical piece as well, and it was a visual thing. And then what I did is I simply did this. I reached over to the candle and I blew it out. And I took the hourglass and I put it on its side. And I said just 2 words, time out. And I stepped down. They never forgot that because they realized that's why it's there. But you need to realize you need to have a memento mori. It wouldn't be unwise to have something like that. Because no earthly good will satisfy you. You are a pilgrim, you are meant for more. and we have a holy desire. Now, the terrain of your journey, have you noticed changes in the course of your life? It becomes sometimes more smooth and sometimes really treacherous. It happens even in the course of a year, but in the course of your life, the terrain will change as well. And so here is what the tension is. It's a life of both joy but also travail, is it not? Let's be realistic. It's got its pleasures, but it has its afflictions. It has its clarity, but it has its confusion. We have assurances, but we have doubts. We have times of comfort and times of pain. We have relationships, but then alienation and broken relationships. We have hope, but we can sometimes submit to despair. Obedience and disbelief become the contrasts. Confidence and uncertainty. How can that be that you have both? Because it is. You're living in an ambiguity. What appears to be a tragedy. This life is tragic if this is all there was, and our diminishments occur, there's a tragedy to that. But it's actually a tragic comedy, because the next act reveals that it actually is a comedy. And you know how I like to put it, that the best is yet to come. And this is pretty critical. Again, I say it again and again because I want you to hear it again and again. God redeems what he allows. He will redeem what he allows. And additionally, we're not shaped by the pain of our past, but rather what that pain is going to do with you and through you. It's pain with a purpose. And you're actually defined by the unbounded joy of your future. But even the pain of the past will contribute to that joy. So it's a very rich picture. So there is an ambiguity, isn't there? That we live in uncertainty, but we continue to transfer our hope from the unseen, from the seen to the unseen, from the now to the not yet. Two key truths in our journey, though. One is we can be sure that others have preceded us, and some have left maps. And that's a helpful thing to know. We don't just start this de novo. We're not the first generation. We do well to listen to the wisdom of others who pressed before us. And most of my mentors are dead. It's always been so. My greatest mentors, most of them are dead. But even though they are dead, like Augustine and Pascal and others like this, even though they're dead, yet, as Hebrews says, yet they speak. You see, because their words continue to speak, and that's a powerful thing. I also have been privileged with living mentors. Now, most of those are in the presence of the Lord, but wonderful living mentors as well. But so these are people who don't just start the first generation. You pick up from that, and you learn from what's available, and you build from that. And God has equipped us with his resources. So the beauty is, it's not only telling you how you should live. That's one thing. How should you live your life? Jesus makes that as clearer than anyone. Here is the way, walk in it. But what's the other thing he does besides tell us how to live? He empowers us to do what would otherwise be impossible of human attainment. He empowers you to actually live in perfection, to fulfill the law, to the degree to which you are trusting the Father, abiding in the Son, and walking by the Spirit, which is more or less three ways of saying the same thing, isn't it? Trust the Father, abide in the Son, walk by the Spirit. And you know how I like to use it. Trust the Father, may I know you more clearly. Abide in the Son, love you more dearly, walk by the Spirit, follow you more nearly. Insofar as I'm doing that, guess what? While I'm in the Spirit, I am producing the fruit of the Spirit, not the deeds of the flesh. But you'll choose one way or the other. You'll either be in the flesh or in the Spirit. There's no third alternative. You can't be halfway. And so you train yourself to become more Spirit-led, so that becomes more and more your natural, as it were, disposition to walk in his power. But he's equipped us. He's given us the power to do what he calls us to do, and that's the uniqueness. So as I look at these 12 facets then, these diverse approaches, the common mistake, as I mentioned earlier, is to confuse one and suppose that's the whole. That's just not going to be the case. There's more than disciplined spirituality. There's more than spirit-filled spirituality. There's more than warfare spirituality. Each of this is a component, a facet of a larger whole. Therefore, be very suspicious of any single formula. Even when you read the Gospels, isn't it intriguing that they are not biographies, but they're thematic portraits? Understand that the Gospels are highly thematic. And we won't go into that, but the way in which they develop Yeshua HaMashiach in Matthew is very different than the way Luke will present him as the perfect man. And then John as the one who the one who took on flesh and became one with us. Each one looks at the life of Christ from a different angle. Guess what happens? The total will always be what? Greater than the sum of the parts. It's not either or, it's both and that's the richness. And doesn't that make sense? The Trinitarian vision of God. There's a unity and a diversity. He's the ultimate basis for equality and authority as well. He's the ultimate foundation for relationships. He's the ultimate one for understanding us because he took on humanity and became one with us with undiminished deity. So each of these then emphasizes a different thing. So we're going to present a variety of pathways. And the first of these I'll just mention, and I bookend the conform to his image with relationships, and that's very intentional. It begins and ends with relationships. Here's how I put it. We come to faith, how? Not in community. There's not a group conversion. Constantine tried that. It didn't work out very well when you just baptize a bunch of pagans. You don't come to faith as a collective. You come to faith how? As individuals. Each of us has to make a decision to receive or reject. I'm thinking about this particular individual who has been invited because he speaks in the shroud, even though he's not a believer. It's kind of the Shroud of Turin, very interesting stuff. And so he speaks in all these Baptist churches, and he says, I've heard the gospel 1,000 times. So they all want me to hear the gospel. But guess what, though? What he doesn't realize is that he's assuming that some kind of neutrality or lack of a choice is some virtue. It's not. You don't have an option. In choosing to reject and not receive, he's rejecting. You cannot just be neutral. Because to ignore him is tantamount to reject him. So I like to bring a person, you do know that you're gambling your eternal destiny hoping that Jesus is wrong. What if there was a 2% chance that he really was the Messiah as he claimed to be? What would be your benefit? I mean, I use the Pascal wager. You'd lose, if you bet against him, you lose everything and gain nothing really of much meaning. But if it turns out he's right, you gain everything and lose nothing. It's a pretty good deal. So just even if it was a tiny fraction of a thing, a wise person would choose that. So relational spirituality, we begin with coming to faith as individuals, but how do we grow? We grow in community. And that's why the last facet is corporate spirituality. That talks about the community. Remember, we talked about the way we grow individually is the Word of God and prayer and suffering as well as the community. So all those things. So loving God completely, as you know, and you've heard me talk about this, and I'm going to go into it in more detail again because it's so critical to return to these fundamentals. To love God completely, here's how I define it. To love the Lord your God with all your what? Your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. You notice it's inside out, from your inner being to your soul, to your mind, your thoughts, and your hands. It's a heart, head, and hands deal. It's being, knowing, and doing. You see, it's loving well, learning well, and living well. So it's always inside out. So to love God completely, then, is to love Him from the inside out. And of course, that would be a growing process. And so it's a growing apprehension. The more you know Him, the more you're capable of knowing Him. And so then to love ourselves correctly is to choose to believe that what God tells you about yourself is true in spite of your feelings and experiences to the contrary. And you may have received conditional or performance-based acceptance, but He's telling you that you are unconditionally accepted in the Beloved because I've adopted you into my family. And so I have to choose to believe it, even though it doesn't fit with my experience. Because I may have been one of those people who heard a lie like, you got 4 A's and a B, what'd you get the B for? Or how come you can't be like your brother? Or any number of things like that. So you're just stupid, aren't you? Or you'll never amount to anything. And so many people, their greatest achievements are actually done to actually prove to a father who may even be dead that they will accomplish something. So the fact is, to love yourself correctly is to choose to believe that what God says about you is true. And then the more you do it, guess what happens? You have more security when he defines you. You have more significance because he paid for you, and you have more a sense of satisfaction because he's empowered you to do something that's going to last forever. That's pretty strong. And when you do that, guess what? You approach relationships out of the overflow of Christ in you, don't you? You approach him out of the overflow of who you are, so that instead of approaching relationships out of deficiency, you approach them out of what? Sufficiency, wholeness. So instead of using people to get your needs met, you now can focus on their needs and your character rather than their character and your needs. And so as a result, you love them compassionately. And then when you do that, what happens is the process continues. It's reciprocal, because you see, whatever begins with the love of God ends with the love of neighbor, and then it enhances the love of God, and so it's a reciprocal process. It continues to grow. What we're going to be talking about as paradigm spirituality when we go through that facet is something so critical to me that I put it right after the relationships. Of all the things I could choose, I put this one next, because you and I are called to cultivate an eternal perspective in a temporal arena. And that is a very difficult thing for us to do. Jesus, it's often said, spoke more about money than any other topic, but actually, he was using money to illustrate a more fundamental issue, temporal versus the eternal. Because he talked about, what good is it if a person has a huge portfolio on earth and dies a spiritual pauper, you see. I was just talking with a friend of mine who was tempted at one point, because of some relationships, to move from where he lives in Baton Rouge, but he was almost moved to Dallas because of this multi-billionaire who wanted him to have this. And he sometimes looks back with regret and remorse. I could have done this and all that. But you know, when the more he described, I asked him about this billionaire. And the more I learned about him, the more I didn't want to be him. You see? Because he's defined by superficial stuff. Relationships don't last. He doesn't have the satisfaction he's looking for. And I have more satisfaction, I'm sure, significance, and a sense of accomplishment than I think this person has, because it's not based upon my performance, but by Christ in me. So I have a sense of peace, vertical peace and horizontal shalom, that no one can purchase. And that's why that we can walk in the peace of God, and you wonder how much peace a person like this may know. So rather than envy those who have that, it's to realize, no, we are rich in faith. And whether we are given much but the more you're given financially, by the way, and I wrote a book on this called Leverage, where you're leveraging temporal resources for eternal gain. Don't let that define you, because a lot of people, even believers, can be defined by the pile. Even if they've already given money away into a donor-advised fund, they still don't release it. Why? Because their name's on it. And so it's a really hard thing. It's a gravity. The more you have, the more it will grab you. So you need an eternal perspective in this temporal arena. And to have a paradigm shift that goes on. Now, this is the problem with it. It's a reversible paradigm. The greatest paradigm, the Copernican revolution, means that the Earth is no longer at the center of the solar system. No, the sun properly belongs there. Just like me, my ego is not at the center of the solar system, but the S-O-N is there. You see, he's in that proper place. So I have to do a kind of a Copernican revolution every day, where I displace myself and put the Son of God at the center of my being, if that makes sense. And almost every day, because we can easily crawl off the altar. A living sacrifice crawls off the altar, you see. And also we unlearn spiritual truth. We leak. So we have to constantly have this paradigm shift. to learn to transfer our hope from those things which are passing away into those things which are going to last forever. So that's a kind of an overview, a high glance at that. But I couldn't think of a higher and more important topic, because to build an eternal portfolio, to give your life in exchange for something God's going to declare to be important, matters. And so in my own ministry, I find myself pitching my message more and more toward fourth soil. And that's what the fourth soil is. Those are the ones who bore fruit. How much did they bear? 30, 60, 100-fold. They're not a large number in the church. So if the metrics of this world are not what I'm using, because you see, I can't quantify the 30, 60, and 100-fold. I can't quantify the impact I'm having by the grace of God on another person who may multiply that in ways I'll never know, and so it goes on. You can't quantify that. So actually, a heavenly portfolio is actually greater than the earthly, even though if there are thousands and many, many, many people. Actually, that's the better way to see it, but earthly metrics are not the same as God's. And that's the hard thing for us to do, is to treat things, and this is the hardest wisdom of all, is to treat things according to their true value. That's the greatest wisdom. And I really essentially what Jonathan Edwards taught us. Treat things according to their true value. Now, who gets to define value? If it's the world, you know what to go for, and it will not actually be true value. If it's the Word, now we have an answer. And actually be rich toward God so that there's a treasure of relationships. So the true currency of heaven is not time, talent, and treasure, as you know. The true currency of heaven is people. It's relationships. It's building into, because you've never met a mere mortal. So the smartest thing you can do is to leverage those things that are passing away and to turn them into the currency of that which is going to last forever, the Word of God and people. So it's also paradigm spirituality reminds me to recognize how brief the sojourn is. So living in the precious present each day as if it's all I've got. Living more and more in this present tense is a very important principle for me these days. The third out of the 12 is disciplined spirituality. And I put this next because it is absolutely essential that there are certain historical disciplines that are time-tested. And these are maps that have been left, and certain things have been seen. Even things like the rule of St. Benedict, where they had this principle that you could apply, ora et labora. I love that principle, ora et labora. And you know what the last part is, labora, labor, work. Ora, that means prayer. Oratory, you see, oration, but like an oratorio is a prayer, as it were, to God, you see. So what does that mean, ora et labora? It means that whether you were at work in the kitchen or in the field or in whatever their industry is, you are praying while you're working. Your work becomes a prayer and your prayer becomes a work, so that there's no distinction between the sacred and the secular. And that's a brilliant thought. So that means that the most routine, ordinary things can take on the splendor of the extraordinary when you bring Him into it. There's no sacred secular dichotomy. So these disciplines then can train you to be more conscious of Him and more alive in this opportunity. And there are various ones, and there are benefits that they provide that we're going to look into again. Various disciplines like prayer and study and meditation, but also of worship, of fasting, of solitude, of silence, and things like that. And one of the best disciplines one can do in our time is to fast from technology. A technology fast. Take a weekend and don't use any technology. Then you'll realize the degree to which you become addicted. It's kind of interesting. But there are benefits of these disciplines, and what they do is they train you to become more conformed to the image of His Son, and that's a very powerful thing. There's a tension, though, between them. So it's a dependent grace, but it's a graceful dependency, a disciplined grace. And so it's both God and me. And so it won't, unless God, again, without God, as it's been said, without God, we cannot. Without us, he will not. So that's the tension. You have to be a player. That's why God's not interested in an automaton. He's not interested in AI in that respect. You're not going to have a relationship with a device. But rather, you're dealing with a person who can respond to and therefore receive or reject. But a response will be made. And therefore, we are called to be responsive people because you are defined by not by what happens to you, but what? How you respond to what happens to you. That's what defines you. And so it becomes that's where the disciplines come in. I think we will pick up on exchange life spirituality next week and go from there. But in doing this, though, I'm hoping I'm just giving you an overview and an appetite for something over the next few weeks. That will be, my desire here is for the Spirit to use some of these thoughts and to encourage, equip, and empower you to become more conformed to the image of His Son. That's what we're here for. And I recognize every day is a gift, every day. And as you know, it goes by faster and faster. And so the precious present, and to realize that every day I'm called to be a person who pursues Him in this day. And as I live this day, I want to live this day how? In the light of that day. So again, with the 2 days. So if I were to imagine strongly that I'm going to be with Jesus this night, what impact would that have for your day? If you knew that you're going to stand before Jesus this night, would that have any bearing on the way you live this day? It shouldn't. Because you see, you should be living as if you're going to be seeing Him this night, for how do you know you won't? We don't want to be presumptuous. A friend of mine, and I'm getting old enough to where I see people dying like flies around me now, and one dear friend of mine, at the 1st of August, he was perfectly fine. Now, last week, he went to be with the Lord. Just unexpected circumstances that take place. You just do not know. So you recognize every day could be your last, and it's a smart way to live. Because then, if it's not, you've been given another day, and that's an opportunity. So live today in light of that day. Lord, we thank You for this opportunity to be together and to put our minds together to ask what the Spirit would have for each of us in our unique circumstances. You know our hearts and our desires, and I pray that You would meet us where we can meet You in a deeper, richer sense. In Christ's name, amen.